Trying to predict late spring weather in Tennessee is always a gamble. This April, we had an unusual mix of rain and warm temperatures. Normally, I'd wait until mid-morning to mow the lawn for the first time, but this year, I had to start earlier. Even so, I'm glad it's not snowing. Last year, we had a freak snowstorm that left 6 inches of snow on the ground. I'd much rather mow the lawn early than deal with snow any day. Plus, with tax season behind me, it's nice to enjoy some sunshine. My house has a distinctive feature, a steep drop in the backyard leading to a small creek and some woods. When the house was built, they added fill to make the front level with the street, creating a steep drop midway up the side. This means the basement, which is enclosed at the front, opens up at the back. This design allowed me to install double doors, making it easy to store my lawnmower and garden tools without cluttering the garage. It's one of my favorite aspects of the house. After wrapping up the yard work and putting everything away, I headed upstairs to take a shower. My grass allergies make me eager to wash off. As I climbed the stairs, I heard my wife's voice coming from the front of the house where I had been mowing. Seeing her friend's car, I expected chatter, but their conversation made me pause with my hand on the door handle. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jake Henderson. Friends call me Hogan because of the actor from Hogan's Heroes, although the show was before my time. I graduated with an accounting degree from the University of Tennessee, got my CPA quickly, and now I lead audit teams at a prominent firm in Nashville. It's not the most thrilling job, but it pays well and gives me a peek into various businesses. My knack for forensic accounting, uncovering financial misdeeds and money laundering, has made me a well-known expert. I've even collaborated with the FBI on several cases. My wife, Emily, studied political science and business with the intention of going to law school. We met during our freshman year. I was waiting for class to start when she walked in. Emily was tall and slim, with a dancer's grace and a full figure. Her long, strawberry blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, making quite an impression. She wore a sundress and sandals, showing off her smooth, soft legs. Her mix of innocence and allure was magnetic, instantly captivating me. Unfortunately, Emily didn't sit next to me or end up in my group project. It took me 4 weeks to work up the courage to talk to her, starting with a silly joke that made her laugh out loud. We chatted more, and I finally asked her to grab coffee after class. "I've been waiting for you to ask that for weeks," she said with a smile. In our last 2 years of college, we were inseparable. Initially, our parents were skeptical about us, but they came around after seeing how committed we were. Things just kept getting better. After graduation, I landed a job at a top accounting firm in Nashville with a great salary for a 22-year-old. Emily got into Vanderbilt Law School, and we stayed in our college apartment. I also started my MBA, funded by my employer, and commuted to work via the local transit system, saving us from needing a car. 3 years later, Emily finished law school and I proposed during a birthday dinner at a fancy steakhouse in downtown Nashville. We married 6 months later. Emily began working as a deputy district attorney in Williamson County. We bought a house in Franklin, the county seat, which has a courthouse and good transit access. This made our commutes long but manageable, avoiding the worst traffic. With her mom's help, Emily found a charming starter home with 3 bedrooms, one for an office with 2 desks, a guest room, and our main bedroom. Being close to her parents was also a perk, as Emily saw it as a future nanny solution when we started a family. As an only child who always wanted siblings, I was excited about this new chapter. We had talked about having kids since our freshman year and agreed to wait until Emily was settled in her career. But finally the time had come, and 2 nights ago we decided to stop Emily's birth control and start trying for a baby. I was thrilled. Then I heard something that made me freeze with my hand on the door handle. Jake and I decided it's time for me to get pregnant, Emily cheerfully told her friend Sarah. Their loud, excited squeals reminded me of the sight of whales beaching themselves on the Tennessee coast in their eagerness. Standing on the stairs, I smiled at their excitement, which matched my own as I looked forward to being a dad. As I moved to grab the pen again, a comment shattered my happiness. "This is amazing, Em," Sarah said. "But what about Mark?" The atmosphere downstairs suddenly grew tense. "Hush," Emily quickly responded. "Jake is outside mowing the lawn." After a brief pause, I imagined Emily scanning the room, expecting me to be lurking nearby. Then she added, "I've already told Mark that I'm ending the affair. He understands. With Congressman Davis retiring, Mark sees an opportunity. Being caught in an affair with a married colleague would be a disaster. It's really that simple." Those words tore my world apart. Mark Roberts, Emily's boss at the DA's office, was a 40-year-old widower with a daughter named Barbara. His wife, Anne, had died of breast cancer, leaving him to raise his daughter alone. Mark was deeply entrenched in politics, and Emily often shared stories about his maneuvers to rise higher. "So you're just stopping like that? You've been involved for 6 months, and now it's over?" Sarah's skeptical tone made my blood boil. She was a former classmate from Vanderbilt, someone I had known even before Emily. Despite their close friendship, I thought Sarah was my friend too. Apparently, I was mistaken. "Stop it," Emily laughed, waving off Sarah's remarks. "You're awful." Mark was intense, but it was too much for me. I love Jake and want to be faithful as we start our family. How many more cliches are we going to joke about? I had a bitter thought. All I need for total misery is to come home, see an unfamiliar car in the driveway, and find them together in my bed. I wanted to burst into the room yelling and breaking things, but I was paralyzed, stunned, my heart thudding in my chest. "Just like that?" Sarah pressed, prompting another laugh from Emily. "Not exactly," Emily conceded. "I have a conference with Mark in Memphis next week. That will be our goodbye. I'll miss the closeness, but Jake and the baby are my priorities. I couldn't stand it any longer, but I was lost about what to do. I cared deeply about Emily, yet this was ripping me apart. My analytical mind kicked in. I needed to step back and think strategically. As I climbed the stairs, I weighed my options. I opened the door and walked into the kitchen. Emily and Sarah were there, sipping tea. Was that guilt on Emily's face? "Honey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. It was then I noticed tears on my face. "Allergies," I said quietly. "Looks like it's going to be a tough spring. Let me go up and clean up. Just leave those clothes by the bathroom. I'll handle them right away so they don't clutter your closet. Remember, I bought you a new pack of Claritin last week. It's in the medicine cabinet." "Thanks," I mumbled, heading to the stairs. I needed some space to think. The next morning, Monday arrived, and I left for an early meeting before Emily woke up, using it as an excuse to avoid her. Last night I claimed I went to bed early because of allergies, masking my true feelings. Sitting in the car, I reflected on what I had learned. On one hand, my wife had cheated, but it seemed over and purely physical. Some might say I should be relieved that she plans to be a dedicated wife and mother now. However, I kept wondering if she'd cheat again. Could there be more secret meetings leading to a divorce where Emily gets custody of the kids and I end up with the financial burden? As an accountant and business analyst, I'm used to weighing risks and benefits, and I saw this situation the same way. My trust in Emily was shattered. To dismiss her actions as just physical misses the main point. She showed no respect for me as her partner. A cheater knows they are hurting their spouse otherwise. They would be honest from the start. While I might never get over her affair with Mark, if she had told me herself, it would have at least shown some respect. Emily's behavior revealed how little she values me. Though I was physically at work, my mind was preoccupied with figuring out what to do next. Besides overhearing that conversation, I had no proof, nor had I noticed any different behavior over the past 6 months when she was supposedly cheating. Confronting her without evidence could be pointless and wouldn't accomplish much. Emily would deny everything. Mark Roberts would deny everything. Taking any legal steps would be financially disastrous, as every judge, politician, and lawyer in the area knew Roberts. I would face significant challenges in clearing my name. The idea of moving and starting over crossed my mind, but our house posed a problem, making it difficult to leave. Emily couldn't afford it alone with her salary, and we didn't have much equity. Trying to sell the house quickly to avoid foreclosure seemed unlikely, given the current market. Such a move would harm our credit scores, which is especially detrimental for a CPA seeking employment. It's tough to be trusted with other people's money when you can't manage your own. I needed solid proof before making any decisions. I believed I could gather evidence, but it unexpectedly came from an unlikely source. 3 days later, despite my efforts, I found no supporting evidence. Emily's personal laptop revealed nothing, and there were no incriminating items hidden away. Then Emily called, inviting us to a political announcement party at Mark Roberts' house on Friday night. I assumed it would be his Senate candidacy announcement, yet I still lacked proof. Frustrated, we arrived at Roberts' lavish mansion near Lookout Mountain, complete with a backyard horse farm. As we walked into the sprawling estate, we were greeted by an enormous tent set up for the guests. Mark Roberts stood there, basking in the attention like a king. Without a wife to play hostess, he had enlisted his 21-year-old daughter, Barbara, to help. She stood beside him, greeting everyone with practiced charm. When it was our turn, Roberts beamed at Emily, saying, "Emily, you've done it. This is fantastic." He gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before turning to me. "Jake, great to see you again. I'd be lost without your wife, but it seems I'll have to give her up soon when you start expanding your family." He chuckled at his own joke. "Just send her back when you're done, no hard feelings." More laughter followed. Emily blushed slightly, and I wanted to throttle the grinning fool. His hint was clear, but he seemed to think it went over my head. "Who knows what the future holds," I replied, my tone flat and neutral, much like delivering audit results. Roberts flushed a bit, and Emily nudged me, murmuring something about being polite. Smoothly moving on to the next guest, Roberts left us alone with his daughter. Emily was undeniably beautiful, but Barbara Roberts was stunning. Even in my simmering anger, I couldn't help but notice her auburn hair and radiant smile, reminiscent of a young Maureen O'Hara. If Emily resembled a graceful ballerina, Barbara looked like she belonged on a swimsuit calendar. She had the kind of beauty, physique, hair, and skin that photographers dreamed of and often had to enhance with Photoshop. Mark Roberts had the perfect political family, a triple threat. He appeared tailor-made for the roles of wise statesman and family man. Losing his wife to cancer had given him a perfect, sympathetic story. Barbara was a princess, former prom queen, business and law student at Vanderbilt, ex-gymnast, and now a cheerleader for the university. According to Emily, Barbara planned to audition for the Titans cheerleading squad at the next open tryouts. Having just turned 21, with a saintly late mother and a smart, beautiful, photogenic daughter, the press would eat it up on the campaign trail. "Jake!" Barbara exclaimed, embracing me tightly. This wasn't a polite hug. It was a full-bodied squeeze, with parts of her pressing against me in a most distracting manner. "You look fantastic. No wonder Emily's been keeping you all to herself. You never come to any of our gatherings. You shouldn't overwork yourself. It's not good for your health." Somehow she managed to say all that in one breath. In less than a second, my fury gave way to utter confusion. I offered a few polite compliments about her appearance and was about to walk away when two realizations struck me. First, Barbara hadn't greeted Emily. Second, what parties was she referring to? Before I could ask, Emily swooped in with her own greeting for Barbara, and we had to yield to the next guests in line. As Emily and I found a spot to relax, I mulled over what Barbara might know. After fixing my wife a drink, I asked, "What parties was Barbara talking about?" Emily just smiled and waved it off. "She's just teasing." Sometimes Mark holds team meetings and strategy sessions here. He says he thinks better with a drink in hand. Barbara was home a few times when we gathered here. Don't spread it around, but Mark let her have a drink at home before she turned 21. That set my mind racing. This scoundrel might have had intimate relations with my wife right here in his home under the guise of business meetings. These could even pass as actual meetings where Emily was the last to leave. Or maybe she left first and came back after everyone else had gone. With his wife deceased and his daughter off at college, he had no need for a discreet hotel room, leaving no trace of their encounters. "So Barbara attends your team meetings?" I asked. Emily shrugged off the question. "No, she was home a few times when her classes were canceled. She's just making fun of her dad for partying during work hours." She tugged at my hand. "Come on, honey, let's get your young wife a drink." For the next hour, Emily stuck close to my side. We chatted with some of her colleagues, and a few brought up our plans to start a family, expressing both sadness at potentially losing Emily for a while and joy for our future. Frankly, I felt a bit embarrassed. How did all these people know about our plans? An hour later, Mark Roberts called for everyone's attention, his daughter beaming beside him. He began by thanking everyone for coming, then proceeded to announce his major campaign. Though anticipated, the news stirred excitement among the attendees. I noticed the local newspaper publisher and one of his reporters undoubtedly jotting down notes for tomorrow's headline. I'll spare you the other party details. It would have been enjoyable if my heart wasn't in pieces and my mind racing to find proof. About 90 minutes after the grand announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, entered, announcing Mark's desire to meet with his staff. While Mark held an elected position, Margaret served as the office's senior manager, essentially overseeing its operations. Prosecutors rotated every 4 years, but Margaret remained a constant presence, revered for her integrity in the legal community. Emily had taken the job mostly because of Margaret. I held her in high regard. Married for over 30 years to an electrician who supported her through college, Margaret now owned a thriving electrical contracting company. Their dedication to each other served as an inspiration for Emily and me. "Sorry for stealing your wife, Jake," Margaret teased. "Paul wants to discuss office organization once he finishes campaigning." With that, they left, and the remaining spouses mingled around the pool. I sought refuge on the far side of the expansive pool, away from the bustling patio. A wicker swing chair hung from chains in a shady corner, offering a quiet place to think. Barely 5 minutes into my solitude, a familiar voice broke the silence. "So this is where you're hiding," Barbara said softly, sliding into the swing beside me. Her little black dress hugged her figure, striking a balance between innocence and allure. My mind noted this detail almost clinically. "You seem troubled," she observed. I was hesitant to open up to my wife's lover's daughter, no matter how appealing she was, just swamped with work. "Lots of audits," I said, trying to steer the conversation away. "Is that right?" Barbara asked with genuine curiosity. "I just finished my last accounting class at university. We covered forensic accounting and law enforcement. I found it really interesting." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "It's not glamorous, but it's like being a detective, piecing together clues to uncover the truth, especially when people try to hide it." "Not everyone gets it," I admitted. Barbara dove into the details of her class and why she found the subject so engaging. I was impressed by her understanding and passion. Listening to her helped me momentarily forget her father's actions and my anger. I slipped into the role of mentor, which eased my inner turmoil. "You truly enjoyed the course," I noted. "You've got a good grasp of the subject." Barbara blushed at the compliment, her polished exterior fading to reveal a genuinely touched young woman. "I thought about joining the FBI, but Dad wants me to pursue prosecution or join one of his friends' law firms. I'm not sure that's what I want," she confided. "Follow your own path, not your dad's," I advised. "Honestly, I wouldn't mind disrupting Mark's plans. I've worked with the FBI when audits revealed criminal activity. They're sharp and dedicated." Before Barbara could respond, Emily appeared from the shadows. "So this is where you've been hiding." "No funny business," she joked. Barbara turned to my wife with a bright smile. "We were talking about Jake's work. It came up in class," she explained. "That's Jake for you," Emily said proudly. "I remember one audit where an employee embezzled funds using his boss's login. Jake discovered that some transfers occurred while the boss was on a business trip, but the login was from the office. Most people would have stopped at implicating the boss, but Jake kept digging. I could have nailed the employee on my first day as a lawyer. Jake left the prosecutors with nothing to do on the case," Emily recounted, beaming at me. I was bewildered. How could she praise me and claim to love me while having an affair with her boss? Seeing my expression, Emily asked, "What's wrong, honey?" "Nothing," I replied, forcing a smile. I replied, just pondering. "Well, stop it. It's a party," Emily scolded lightly. Then she brightened up and said, "Jake, you'll never guess what opportunity I've been offered." Paul and Margaret want me to handle some administrative tasks as I prepare for maternity leave. Once your project is wrapped up, there won't be any loose ends. I'll be working directly under Margaret. My heart skipped a beat at the thought of Emily being away from Mark. But then she continued, I'll have to travel occasionally. I'll be delivering important documents to Paul during the campaign, so I won't be directly involved, but we'll get to see some behind-the-scenes action. It's going to be so exciting. Again, my heart sank. Emily had talked about ending the affair to start our family, but I couldn't shake the fear of her getting drawn back in, especially with the allure of the campaign trail. If she became pregnant, who's to say the baby would be mine? Mark and I are similar in size and complexion. Without a DNA test, it would be hard to tell. My anger began to rise, but I controlled it. Now wasn't the time. Barbara joined Emily in a conversation about her new role, leaving me on the sidelines. I used the opportunity to gather my thoughts. After tonight, I needed to start planning. I had to counter Mark's influence, though I had no idea where to start. 2 days later, the solution came to me at the office. Your 400 appointment is here, my assistant announced. Surprised, I checked my calendar, finding no bookings. Before I could respond, Barbara walked in. Hey, Jake, she greeted, her long auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore a light sundress that accentuated her legs, with strappy sandals climbing almost to her knees. The dress was subtle yet hinted at allure, with thin straps leaving her arms bare. I was speechless as she entered. I hope you don't mind, Barbara began, closing the door behind her. I told Mary we had a meeting to discuss my career and Emily's role with my father. Politely, I rose from my chair. Nice to see you. Just working on some reports, I said, motioning for her to sit. After she did, I followed suit. What's on your mind? Barbara's cheerful expression vanished. I think you know, Jake. I saw it when you talked to my father. I'm really sorry he's tarnishing such a good man. I was taken aback. This wasn't what I expected. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. Barbara laid it out bluntly. My father's affair with your wife. I found out a few months ago. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the shock. How did you find out? On February 1st, Barbara confessed. I came home early that day and stumbled upon them. I had been out with a friend and came back to drop off some things. Dad asked when I'd be back, and I said after dinner. My plans fell through, so I returned early. I saw them together in the jacuzzi. I took photos and filmed them running inside, undressed. You took pictures? I asked, stunned. I also wondered if I could get copies. As if reading my mind, Barbara pulled a large envelope from her bag and placed it on my desk. Here are pictures from that day and a few others, she said. Dad installed a security system at home. The entire exterior and several interior rooms are monitored. If you have the website, key fob, and password, you can access it from anywhere. There's also a flash drive with video recordings. I was floored. Mark's daughter had handed me everything I needed for a divorce. Why? I asked. Barbara's sorrowful expression turned to anger. I hate him more than you ever could, she replied quietly. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. After a moment, she did. Dad met Mom when she was a college student. He was an ambitious lawyer in Nashville, working on assault cases. Mom had come from Ireland to escape the chaos after losing her family in the Londonderry bombing, Barbara explained. Mom was dating a guy who abused her. Dad handled the case, they met, and a year later they were married. Dad always wanted a trophy wife. Mom found a protector. I came along a few years later. Dad pushed me into gymnastics, thinking it would boost his career. Do you know how most gymnasts' careers end? Barbara asked. I shook my head. Barbara smirked. They call it the 3 B's, boobs, butts, and boys. I got the first one. I was pushed into cheerleading to fit the all-American girl image. I enjoyed it, but by 16 I realized I was just a pawn. Mom knew Dad had affairs right after they married. She pleaded with him to stop, but was too powerless. Divorce was out of the question for her as a devout Catholic. Barbara paused, gathering her thoughts. After a beat, she continued. Sometimes I wonder if Mom's poor response to cancer treatment was a subconscious desire to escape, or active sabotage of her treatment. Anyway, I was by her side in the hospital when she passed. Officially, Dad was in court winning a big case. He coerced the doctor into altering the time of death. In reality, he celebrated by having sex with his assistant at her apartment. He paraded Mom as a trophy, and the press loved their story, a heroic prosecutor rescuing an abused woman. Damn it, he abused her more than anyone, and I witnessed it. Why are you telling me all this? I asked, feeling unworthy of her revelations. Hogan, my father, he's not a good man. After Mom passed, he hid his affairs until I went to college. Then he started hosting meetings at home and elsewhere, not just for work, but also for some charity groups he's involved with. I know for a fact he's seeing 2 other women from these groups. One woman truly believes it's true love and plans to leave her husband. Is this what Emily's considering? I asked, though the gravity of what I'd heard weighed heavily on me. Barbara shook her head. No, she sees it as just fun. They say power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and Emily seems to be living proof of that. I overheard her talking about some senator they were meeting with my dad. So what's your goal here? I inquired. Barbara met my gaze squarely. I want you to end your marriage with this betrayer. I want my father's career to be ruined so he couldn't be elected dog catcher in a town full of cats. I've thought about sending my evidence to the newspapers or the opposition, but he has too many allies. Together we can bring them down. Won't it complicate your schooling? I asked. Barbara tossed her auburn hair. No, my mother left me her inheritance as a trust fund. I haven't touched it, but if need be, I could cover my tuition and MBA and still have a comfortable cushion left. If your mother had so much money, why didn't she leave with you? She could have gone to Ireland where your father couldn't reach her. Barbara winced. She was raised Irish Catholic. Divorce was never an option. Despite everything, she clung to her faith until the end. That's the only reason I think her death wasn't intentional. Suicide is considered a sin. Barbara's sincerity was undeniable. She wanted to ruin her father's career, and my possession of this information didn't bode well for his aspirations. It didn't seem like a trap. If Emily and Mark wanted to ruin me, they could do it openly in court. This sort of scheme was reserved for the desperate, like me. A plan began to take shape in my mind. I needed Barbara's help with a few things to gauge her commitment to destroying her father. All right, I consented, but I don't want to destroy him by releasing these photos or naming him in the divorce. Barbara looked surprised. Why not? She demanded, ready to argue. I held up a hand. I'm not saying we won't ruin him, but I'd rather avoid the scandal of a betrayed husband in the press. I want to dismantle everything he's worked for, erode his power and influence. I can achieve a low-profile divorce without attracting attention. Barbara stared at me in shock. A minute later, a cunning smile crept onto her face. What do you need? I grinned. I'll do what I'm best at. Get me his financial records, personal and campaign-related. They nailed Al Capone on tax evasion. I'm confident I'll find something on your father. And if not, she raised an eyebrow. And if not, I have another plan. For the next 3 days, Barbara and I worked tirelessly. She installed a keystroke recorder on her father's laptop and home computer, backing up his hard drive. We configured their security system to sync records to a cloud space I controlled overseas. Meanwhile, I refrained from monitoring Emily's phone. With Barbara's evidence, I didn't need anything else. I activated a GPS tracker meant for parental use, primarily relying on cell towers unless I initiated GPS activation. I didn't want Emily interrupting me at home while I worked. The day after Barbara's initial visit, I feigned a groin injury as an excuse to avoid intimacy with my wife. After learning about Mark's numerous partners, I wasn't willing to take any more risks. Plus, I doubted I could be with her without my anger boiling over. I also scheduled an appointment with a doctor for STI testing. Initially, nothing was detected, but some diseases like HIV can take months to show up. Emily left for the Pittsburgh conference, her excitement tinged with irritation. She was eager for the trip. Despite everything, a part of me still loved her. I could never trust her again, but my feelings remained. However, the thought of being intimate with her after what I'd discovered was unbearable. On Thursday morning, Emily was packed and ready, waiting for Mark and the junior lawyer accompanying them to the conference. I wondered if the young man knew he was just a cover. "I'll be back Sunday afternoon," Emily said, dropping her bag by the front door. Seated at the table, I sipped my coffee with my back to her. She embraced me from behind, her lips close to my ear. "I hope you'll feel better so we can focus on the baby." Her whispered words stirred memories of happier times. I fought back tears, managing to regain my composure. "I'll apply ice to speed up the healing," I assured her, stroking her hand and kissing her forehead. "I wish I didn't have to leave. It'd be better to stay home with you all weekend," she murmured. "You could always tell Mark something urgent came up," I suggested, almost without thinking. Emily looked at me incredulously. "What's your issue with Mark? You seemed rude at the party and now you talk like you despise him." I forced myself to calm down and shrugged. "Honestly, I've seen too many arrogant fools like him who think they're untouchable. They're big fish in small ponds, pretending to have power and manipulating people into believing it. Remember that mayor in South Carolina? Embezzled city funds, slept with 3 married women. Now he's in federal prison for 10 years, and they're all divorced and shamed. Mark gives off the same vibe. If he gets to Washington, he'll be preying on clueless interns within a week. But his facade will crumble eventually, and when it does, I wouldn't want to be caught in the fallout." Emily gazed at me, taken aback. While Id ranted about such individuals before, I'd never connected Mark with them until now. Perhaps I should have kept quiet, but releasing those feelings felt cathartic. Despite the end of our marriage, I thought it fair to warn Emily, even though my trust in her was irreparably broken. "Jake, that's awful what you said about Mark," Emily objected. "He's done a lot for this district. He's not like that." I detected a pleading undertone in her denial. The sound of a car horn outside interrupted us. "Mark's here." Emily sighed in frustration. She shot me a look that quickly shifted from remorse to fear. "I'll be back in 4 days," she said softly. "We can discuss it then, but brace yourself. We have a child to focus on." She embraced me, kissing me fervently. I reciprocated with equal passion. "Have a good week," she whispered. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied. She grabbed her bag and opened the front door. "Goodbye, dear," she called over her shoulder. "Goodbye, Emily," I responded before closing the door. 30 minutes later, I boarded a train to the city for an appointment with the FBI. As it turned out, I didn't need to gather any more evidence. I'd rate Mark Roberts' embezzlement tactics as moderately clever. Barbara and I met at her off-campus apartment to scrutinize the documents she'd retrieved from his computer. Overall, his methods were fairly standard. I estimated he had about $2 million stashed in an offshore account according to the transfers. However, I couldn't confirm if it still existed, as those records weren't included. Much of this money came from small donors, unlikely to attract IRS attention. But why were out-of-state individuals donating to the DA's campaign? I traced some to defendants whose cases had been dismissed or had received unusually lenient plea agreements. However, Barbara unearthed the biggest bombshell. It turns out she wasn't Mark's only child. Along the way, he fathered children with 2 other women. One was born 3 years before his wife's death, with the mother being one of his employees at the time. The third child, born 8 months after his wife's passing, was from an 18-year-old hospital volunteer. Mark compensated each woman $2,000 a month as campaign consultants for poll research. Barbara nearly wrecked her apartment in a fit of rage. Her fiery red hair was quite the warning sign. By the time Emily and Mark left for the conference, we had combed through all his records. Some questions lingered, but we lacked the resources to delve further. So I documented my findings and arranged a meeting with a senior FBI agent I knew in the Philadelphia office. Barbara accompanied me to recount the fabricated tale we'd concocted. She claimed that after taking a forensic accounting course, she wanted to examine real documents and innocently decided to look at her father's notes. Upon noticing discrepancies, she contacted me due to my wife's employment with her father and my experience in the field. Gary, the FBI agent, was a seasoned pro. Sensing there was more to the story, he took our gift, a corrupt prosecutor, in his backyard aiming for a Senate seat. This career boost felt heaven-sent. Barbara had a late class, so we took a cab to her place, and I walked to 30th Street Station for the train home. Thoughts of packing up and leaving crossed my mind. When Kelly returned, Gary promised to expedite the case, aiming to subpoena Evans's documents by Wednesday. Once the investigation leaked, Mark would quickly realize his power was fleeting as his allies deserted him. Kelly called during my train ride home, mentioning a late dinner and her likely absence from home tonight. Sensing my distraction, she probed, and I vaguely mentioned an FBI meeting citing ongoing investigation constraints. "This case seems to weigh on you," she remarked, seeking hints. Succumbing to temptation, I hinted at corrupt politicians, bribery, money laundering, and scandalous affairs. "Oh, you're no fun," she pouted. "Don't worry, love, your secret's safe," I assured her. Upon returning home, I sat in awe, reflecting on how a decade-long marriage was ending. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt like a spectator watching my life fade away. Hours passed before I stirred from my stupor, realizing I needed a change. Ironically, as I mowed the lawn, a BMW pulled up, and I watched Barbara emerge. Her statuesque legs, wrapped in sandals reminiscent of ancient Greece, caught my eye. Her toga-like dress, semi-sheer and clinging to her curves, accentuated her allure. Long red hair framed her face, but it was her gray-green eyes and warm smile that captivated me. As she approached, I shut off the engine and greeted her. "You're looking better than I expected," Barbara remarked. "I half expected to find you drowning in a bottle or contemplating a ledge." I chuckled. "Last night I entertained thoughts of both, but it had to be done," I explained. "It serves as a distraction." "Have you seen a lawyer?" she inquired. I shrugged. "Met with one on Tuesday. The documents will be ready Monday. I agreed to audit a client in Austin, leaving Tuesday and staying the full 3 weeks instead of my usual remote work. It might seem like avoiding, but I'd rather not be around when the chaos erupts," I continued. Barbara nodded knowingly. She understood the attention it would draw as the daughter of that man. "It's good you're planning ahead," she acknowledged. "It's what you're good at," she grinned. "Now I can plan too." "All right, here's my plan," Barbara announced. "I'll help you wrap up your work here, then you'll join me for some fun. Maybe even get a little wild. I've got a swimsuit you'll adore." I tried to protest. "I'm still married, and I don't think I'll be ready for anything anytime soon." "You need to blow off some steam before you blow a gasket," she insisted with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "And besides, you know what they say, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander." Her gaze was teasing yet sincere. I couldn't help but laugh. In a twist of fate, we bumped into Olivia after finishing the yard work. After freshening up, we headed to a nice restaurant for a late lunch. I wasn't in the mood for revenge or physical engagement, but it felt good to step out, especially with someone as sweet as Barbara. Approaching the restaurant, I spotted Olivia's car parked outside. I almost suggested to Barbara that we find another place, but I didn't. Instead, I did something totally out of character. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. Despite all my careful planning, something inside me snapped when I saw Olivia's car in that parking lot. Casually, I embraced the red-haired beauty and guided her into the restaurant. Without much ado, I slipped the owner a tip to ensure we were seated at a specific table, somewhat secluded but still visible from certain angles. Seated, I positioned Barbara to face outward and took a seat beside her, holding her hand. "What's this about?" she asked with a sweet smile. "Not that I'm complaining." I chuckled. "Remember how I told you about finding out about my wife's affair? About her friend Olivia? Well, her car is parked right out there." Barbara erupted into laughter. "So, I'm the other woman? Well, I can handle that," she joked, leaning forward to give me a soft kiss on the lips, a promise of more to come. Our food arrived, and I found myself thoroughly enjoying the moment, forgetting all about the impromptu setup as I relished Barbara's company and her witty banter. "I've never heard accounting sound so naughty," she quipped, making me laugh. Glancing back, I spotted Olivia walking past us. I pointed her out to Barbara. "Oh my God," she giggled. "This is too good." Leaning in for another kiss, I felt my hand instinctively move under the table, resting on Barbara's leg. Her skin was incredibly soft, her muscles firm yet elastic. The touch sent shivers down my spine, and I was lost in the moment until Olivia's sudden outburst cut through the air. "Hogan, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled, drawing everyone's attention. "And who's this woman you're flaunting while your wife's away? I expected better from you." I released Barbara's hand and turned to face my ex-girlfriend. "What's your problem, Liv? It's just a little carefree fun before Kelly and I settle down and have a baby. And could you keep it down? People are trying to eat," I said, trying to brush off Olivia's shocked expression. "What?" she began, clearly taken aback. "Oh, come on, Liv. Kelly does the same. I'm sure she's having fun with her boss right now, and she's been at it for months, so I figured it was only fair that I seduced the boss's daughter." Olivia looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Sensing Barbara starting to giggle, I gently squeezed her hand to quiet her. "You knew about Olivia?" she stuttered. "I know that I must play the faithful, clueless husband while my wife runs around with the help of a woman I considered a close friend," I retorted with disdain. Olivia winced at the contempt in my voice. "I know Kelly wanted to try something else one last time before having a baby, like a last fling before the wedding. If it was normal for her, what do you have against me? I had no evidence of Kelly having affairs before Paul, but once a cheater, always a cheater, as they say. I threw my suspicion out there, wondering if Olivia was unstable enough to confirm it. She did. You knew about this too?" I sighed. "No, but thanks for the confirmation," I replied. Olivia paled at this. "Go away, Olivia," I said firmly. She turned and hurried away from the table. A few minutes later, we heard a commotion. It was Olivia leaving the restaurant. "Well, it was fun while it lasted," Barbara said with a slight laugh. "I really wanted her to stick around longer." Her smile made me blush. "You know she's probably on the phone with your wife right now," she added. "Perhaps," I agreed. "I give her 5 minutes before my phone starts ringing. But if she left now, it's a 5-hour drive back home from Pittsburgh. That gives us time for dessert and for me to pack up and head home. It's a shame I won't get to see you in that bikini you promised." Barbara laughed again. "Oh well, maybe another time." She reached out and grabbed my shirt, pulling me closer. "You know my semester ends in a week and a half," she murmured in my ear. "I've always wanted to see Austin." Her words barely registered as her tongue slipped into my ear. Kelly started calling me 10 minutes after Olivia left the restaurant. I listened to a few of her enraged messages, almost finding them comical. After an hour of her relentless messages and texts, I blocked her number. I knew she might call from another phone eventually, but she was driving back from Pittsburgh and couldn't simply borrow someone else's phone on the highway. When I got home, I packed up all my personal belongings, not just what I needed for the trip to Austin. I had time. 4 hours after encountering Olivia, I departed from my home, possibly for the final time. After securing a hotel room near the Philadelphia airport, I placed most of my belongings in storage until I found permanent accommodation. I had several phone conversations with Barbara, who was out walking with a friend due to her father bombarding her with angry messages. I rescheduled my flight to Austin for the following day and departed on Monday morning. Despite Kelly's repeated calls from different numbers filled with tearful accusations about how I had ruined her life and career, I remained resolute. Olivia's initial outburst drew attention, leading to a blog comment that accurately depicted Barbara and me as players in the unfolding drama. My remark about Kelly's involvement with Paul during their weekend in Pittsburgh stirred controversy within the county's political and legal circles. For the rest of the week, I avoided most news from Philadelphia. It wasn't until Friday that I received a letter from Margaret, a senior manager in the DA's office. Surprisingly, Margaret apologized for the ordeal. She acknowledged Paul's extramarital affairs but claimed ignorance about Kelly's involvement. She commended me for using legal means to seek retribution against the lawyer. The following week in the DA's office was tumultuous, with Paul attempting to deflect blame onto his daughter's rebellion, influenced by her unfaithful husband. However, his arrest on Tuesday, followed by dramatic scenes at the courthouse, changed the narrative. In her letter, Margaret recounted how Paul was arrested during a meeting in his office, shocking everyone present. He was swiftly taken into custody and paraded past reporters. Margaret expressed regret for the turmoil and offered assistance, acknowledging my undeserved predicament. While part of her letter seemed aimed at damage control, I believed Margaret's sincerity stemmed from her moral and professional integrity. My plans for a discreet divorce were shattered by my impulsive encounter with Olivia. Paul's arrest garnered media attention, turning our story into headline news characterized by romance, betrayal, and revenge. Thankfully, being out of town shielded me from the worst of the media frenzy. Booking a separate hotel room further obscured my whereabouts, frustrating attempts to track me down. However, upon checking in, I noticed reporters stationed around the hotel, hoping to catch a glimpse of me. On TV, I saw them camped outside my house, filming my relatives coming and going while Kelly remained indoors. Barbara faced the harshest scrutiny as the daughter who betrayed her father. Despite having to attend classes and take exams, she became an easy target for the media in the initial days. Eventually, the school intervened, forcing reporters off campus for disturbing students. Additionally, 2 women who had children with Paul sought their 15 minutes of fame, adding to the media frenzy. With her final exams completed, Barbara quietly slipped away from campus and headed to the airport. Disappointed but not entirely surprised, the media missed her absence from the graduation ceremony. As time passed, the story receded to the sidelines, resurfacing only when Paul's trial began. His guilty plea resulted in a 20-year federal sentence, sparing Barbara and me from testifying. Subsequently, the case faded from public attention, taking Barbara, Kelly, and me with it. Surprisingly, my divorce proceeded swiftly and without much drama. Kelly signed the papers and 4 days later sent a letter expressing remorse for her actions. She acknowledged her hypocrisy upon learning of her own infidelity and requested a meeting to apologize in person when circumstances permitted. She ended by expressing eternal love and good wishes before relocating to the Midwest to live with her aunt. My involvement in uncovering Paul's crimes elevated my career, earning me recognition from the FBI for analyzing his tapes. Embracing anonymity from the media, I excelled in my work in Austin, identifying not only the sought-after embezzler but also a second perpetrator unknown at the time. My firm promoted me to lead the white-collar crime team, affectionately dubbed Hogan's Heroes by some. Working late became enjoyable, especially with the company of my new assistant, a recent college graduate eager to gain experience in forensic accounting. And that bikini looked even better strewn across the floor of my hotel room.